Namaste and good morning to everybody. Thank you for joining another session of CoHNA Dialogues. My name is Sudha Jagannathan and I have a co-host here, Pushpita Prasad. We are both members of the board of Coalition of Hindus of North America. We also have another member of CoHNA, Rishabh Saraswat, who's helping us with all the back-end technical stuff. Thank you, Rishabh. And today we have a very good topic, very timely topic. And to help us understand this particular topic of India Citizenship Amendment Act, we have two guests. One is Zeba Zoariah. Thank you, Zeba, for joining. She's joining us from India. And she is a young lawyer and she's a prolific writer. And she writes about current events and she stands up as a proud Indian. I'm very, very happy to see the face of modern India. We forget that. And we'll have one more person join, Amana Ansari. She's a returning guest on CoHNA. And as soon as she joins, we'll introduce her too. But just as a quick briefing on who Amana Ansari is, I would ask you all to log in and subscribe to her channel with her colleague Khalid Beg. The YouTube channel is called India This Week. They both talk a lot about current events from the point of view of people who live in India. And their perspectives are very important and their voices are extremely important. Amna is also a very prolific writer. So I'm looking forward to her joining in a few minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to hand this over to Pushpita so she can frame up this particular topic of India's Citizenship Amendment Act. Take it away, Pushpita.
Sure. Thank you. Namaste, Sudhaji, and namaste, everybody, joining for joining our conference today. As Sudhaji said, we are here to talk about a very important issue of India's Citizenship Amendment Act. And before we get into the parameters of the act, just wanted to explain why the Coalition of Hindus of North America is even talking about this subject. I think it's because our focus is Hindu human rights and Hindus living in US and Canada. But the CAA becomes very important because first of all, it has a direct impact on the human rights of Hindus living in the Indian subcontinent, specifically the three countries that are named in CAA, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. But more importantly, for our lives as diaspora Hindus, CAA has become a stick to beat us no matter where we stay. And it's another unfortunate example of Hinduphobia and how Indian issues are used to target Indian Americans and Hindus living in different parts of the West. So, if this is not our opinion, in 2020, so the law was originally introduced in 2019 and passed by the Indian Parliament. It ran into protests in India, all well and good till then. But suddenly, here in the US, we saw a slew of cities all across the country, starting with Seattle, Albany, a whole bunch of other cities, Hamtramck in Michigan, right here in the Bay Area, the county of Alameda. 8 cities in total actually ended up passing resolutions. And as that process was playing out, we were horrified to see this kind of a pushback against a law that is fundamentally a humanitarian outreach and really a bit of help, a shortcut given in paperwork to a very specific set of refugees. I believe the number is no more than 31,000. Who fled India's neighborhood where they were a tiny religious minority, and they were facing extreme systemic persecution simply because of their faith. This is not a Hindu Muslim issue, even though it was presented as one, because CAA serves all the minorities in India's neighborhood, including Christians, Buddhists, Jains, Parsis, Hindus, and Sikhs. Yet, this law was presented as an anti Muslim law back then and used to criticize Indian Americans. And it's not hyperbole because actually, in the very first year of CoHNA's existence, we ended up intervening in 2 different schools where CAA was being taught in seventh grade. Can you imagine that? Your sixth or seventh grade child facing propaganda around this topic, as well as in high school, and then the resolutions that I talked about as well. So, anyways, then the law went on ice, and when it came back earlier this year, we hailed it as a big win for human rights, which we firmly believe it is, because at the end of the day, CAA does not take away rights from anybody. It only expedites the paperwork for a very specific set of refugees who were already living in, who had already arrived in India prior to 2014. So, with that setup, I wanted to just kind of open up the event. Sudhaji, has Amna joined us?
Yes, Amna is on. And Amna, can you turn on your video? I want to again welcome Amna to our CoHNA Dialogues. She's a returning guest, and she's a very powerful voice when it comes to representing the interest of all Indians when she's in India and abroad. Hey, thank you, Amna. And I want to encourage everybody once more, please join her and her colleague Khalid Beg's India this week. You'll learn a lot about what modern India is all about, and it's not what you read in New York Times. So let's support Amna and Zeba in their writings and in the talk shows they have. That's the only way to have the real voices of India show up. Thank you. So, Pushpita.
Right. And I think also, we are very honored to have Amna and Zeba join us, but this is also part of what Kona does. We try to bring diverse voices for audiences so that there's a lot of propaganda, but in the age of technology and social media, we firmly believe, why do you have to rely on all these intermediaries? Let's just hear from voices directly. And so, welcome again, Amna and Ziba. So let's get going. Ziba, would you like to kick it off with just talking about, we were brainstorming earlier, and I was reminded again of how young you are. But just start off with like your experience and what motivated you to start talking and writing about this topic.
CA has CA NRC has been very personal to me because I hail from the northeastern part of India. So as I come from Assam, I'm born and brought up there. So even though I work in Delhi, but my roots are from Assam, and we all know that how the CA protest started there, how NRC has been taking place there. So it has been very personal for us because for the rest of the country, it might seem like a Hindu Muslim fight. But for us, we have a long due problem of illegal immigrants from Bangladesh. So many refugees coming from Bangladesh have settled in Assam, and so there is a fear amongst the Assamese people that so many refugees from Bangladesh will come in and will settle, and they will get citizenship, and our culture and our identity will be eroded. That is the basic fundamental difference of protest that has been happening in Assam and in the rest of the India. So Assam has demanded that just like
मम्मा
Jammu and
आप
Kashmir,
बार बार इसमें आ रहे हो आप उधर लेट जाओ या इधर
so Assam has demanded that just like Jammu and Kashmir, Assam should be given a special status under the sixth schedule so that their population and our culture is better protected. So when it comes to the term of CAAs, so certain provisions do not apply to the sixth schedule states, and also to some parts where inner line permit has been granted. So that is why in 1985, if I'm not wrong, Assam Accord was signed in Assam. And according to that, the cutoff date uh, to be considered as citizens of India under the accord was set as March 24th of 1971. So the immigrants up to March 24th, 1971 will get all the rights as citizens of India, and our Honorable Chief Minister Hemanta Biswa Sharma of Assam mentioned that CA would benefit at most 5 lakh people, 5 lakh Hindu Bangladeshis, which are left out of the NRC process. So, and he also mentioned that if any person who has not applied for NRC won't get his or her citizenship. So that is some like a brief summary of what actually CA is happening in Assam and with respect to NRC.
So
Yeah,
so it sounds like,
brought up your background because that's the other part of the propaganda that comes up a lot is mixing up CAA and NRC. And I think
Yeah,
there is there's one thing I can say this is like some of the laws we discuss are very funnily named. But the NRC, I believe, is not national. It's a state-specific initiative
yeah,
for the state of Assam, and it is specifically being done at the directive of the Supreme Court. And I think this is where you and I were talking in the prep call that, we forget our history so quickly. But the Supreme Court directed the Assam NRC as a result of the Assam Accords that were signed in the 1980s under Rajiv Gandhi. So nothing to do with the current quote unquote Hindutva dispensation. And if we
yeah,
look at why the Assam Accords were needed, the Assam Accords followed a period of turmoil that basically happened after the 1971 war that resulted in the creation of Bangladesh and the Bengali Hindu genocide that had predated it when India was flooded with millions and millions of refugees, which obviously, led to some of the issues that you're talking about. And we bring it up because in the current era where everyone is looking into sound bites, it's so easy to forget the history for those of us who are not part of it, right? But for those of
yeah,
people who are caught up in these currents of history, whether in Assam, whether in Bangladesh, whether in Bengal, whether in Sindh or whatever, it's not a luxury they have. They can't just say, oh, it doesn't sound good today based on today's, latest trend. They're actually living it and they pay a very hard cost with their blood, sweat, and tears. And so it's very important, even though history is a little boring and not doesn't seem very relevant to our lives. CAA is firmly grounded in the history of the subcontinent, the recent history of the subcontinent, starting from the partition in 1947, the Nehru-Likat Ali Pact in 1950, all of which meant that India had a responsibility there was an interconnected responsibility of these countries to the minorities of each other, which unfortunately the brunt has been borne very heavily. So if people are, so I don't know if Amna ji, you want to jump in here and give us your thoughts on, how you came to this topic and what is your general thinking on it.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for such a lovely introduction. And thank you again to give me this platform and to invite me again here. So, when we talk about the CA, how I started writing about it or started reading about it because of the protest started in India around it. And as a Muslim, I remember in the initial days, I had a lot of question regarding security of, because I also carry the same identity. So the fear mongering was such that I thought, okay, so this is going to be something very discriminative against my own identity. And it should not happen. I mean, it's wrong basically because I am Indian citizen as long as I have remembered and I love my nation, and why there should be any policies which discriminates against my identity. And then I started reading about this what this protest called Shaheen Bagh protest, and it was very famous. And I remember initially I was very convinced by their argument that okay, so NRC will come, then CA will come, and so many Muslim will end up into the this camp, relief camp kind of situation where they won't, where their basically citizenship will be snatched away. And then I started reading about it, and that's what happened when you don't follow people blindly, when you use your own mind. And I was working that time in think tank, and I remember reading all the clauses about Citizenship Act, and how even that time it was written that we need to have an RC again. There would come a time when we need to go through it. So after reading everything, and I realized that actually CA has nothing to do with Indian Muslims. There is no connection of it. It was all the fear mongering. And after realizing it, it's first of all, as a human, when you talk about the human right, you cannot be very indifferent towards other identity, towards those Hindu women. I would say, like as a woman, I started my journey, entire my public career, because of the women right, the women right of Muslim. So how I can be so indifferent to the plight of Hindu women living in the Bangladesh or Pakistan or anywhere else? So for me, it was more about doing the humane side of uh, it, rather than policies. So I can see how it will help those women, how it will help those family, and it is very needed. And it has nothing to do with Indian Muslims. There is no if and but. There is no uh, policies that if we will give this relief to this particular people, that mean that we are taking away something from Indian Muslims. And it was so simple. However, the Indian intellectual class, specifically left, liberal, I would say, they started twisting it into something which was very, I would say, which was very, in those moments, I remember talking to a lot of Muslim, and they genuinely believe that it will snatch away their citizenship. They will genuinely become, sorry. Okay. So they genuinely started believing that they are going to become a victim of this policy. So when I realized that, and I decided that I need to speak up, I have to speak up, um, for two reasons. First of all, because we have to be, as an Indian Muslim, we cannot only talk about our own, interest. We have to think beyond our own identity. We have, when we talk about the minority and we consider ourselves minority, and we talk about all the minority rights, how we can be indifferent to the minorities of other countries, and when they are in such a bad conditions, like there is a no comparison if you compare Indian Muslims in India and in and Pakistani Hindu or Pakistani Bangladeshi. So how we can be so indifferent when we all the time talk about these minorities, right? So this is a hypocrisy. And the second was, the in my perception, this fear that Indian Muslim will become a second class citizen in India, this fear mongering was actually affecting Indian Muslims mentally. It was kind of a mental abuse of Indian Muslims. And so for me, it was, I started speaking because on both of account, not only for minorities of neighboring country, also because I care about Indian Muslims. Because when you read about the Shaheen Bagh protest, a child died there, remember, in those protests unnecessarily. And we also know what happened after that protest. It triggered the riots where 38 people, I guess 38 Muslim and 15 Hindu, they lost their life, precious life. So I knew that it will turn into something very disastrous, and it did eventually. So I thought maybe if I will start speaking up as a dissent voice, maybe it will help someone. I mean, someone who is curious enough to know the truth, going beyond this black and white narrative, it might help them. So that's how I started speaking about CAA.
So, Amna, I have actually a question for you and just a clarification. Thank you for writing, okay, about it. It's not just you, like Zeba, many other Indian Muslims have confidently come forward on CAA publicly. So the bottom line is that the CAA, the two-page law, nobody reads a two-page law, right? Which is so
Yeah.
unfortunate. Anybody out here can download the two-page law. It's no, it has no mention of any exclusion. It's actually a law of inclusion, which is what you referred to, Amna. And it has no impact on the 200 million Muslims in India. right? So the one question I have um, is there sense of fear and a lack of confidence in the citizenship rights of Muslims that people can trigger them so easily, right? And it is used for political reasons. And you mentioned the left liberal doing it. Responsible people who know the truth use this. So I just am curious, is the community feeling such that they can be easily triggered? Because when we look at the Pew Research, I think the Muslims feel as confident of being in Indian as any other religious member in the country. So that is one question I have. Is there something in the community that easily gets triggered?
Okay. So I would go in a history. So, okay, they see themselves as a part of India. However, they have been kept as a vote bank. And this has nothing to do with the current government of BJP. This has been history that even at the time of the Congress or any political party, most of the time Muslim vote based on the fear. Like if you want to save your interest, you have to vote in a bulk to certain party or certain people. They will only save your interest. So this exclusion always has been there. We never addressed it. And then there will come certain kind of fear mongering. There will be for example, if we talk about the UCC, the Muslim community will never understand that we live in a secular nation where gender equality is mentioned in our preamble, in our constitution. And what we, we fight about the secularism, we fight about all these progressive values when we want to take our rights from the majority, but we do not want to implement those same value in within our community. So whenever our community, most of the time, and let me mention this also, when we talk about the socio-economic measures, the Muslim community lag behind of a lot there. So I put this responsibility on Muslims intellectuals and leaderships. And they also consider the certain political party, leader of certain political party as their own leader. So they listen to them. And when those people start sending this message that you are under attack and you will become victim of these policies, they do believe them. It's so easy to control them as a ship by their leadership. So that's the problem. And that's why we talk about the mainstreaming of Muslims. We talk about that. I mean, I would say that I am second generation of Muslim uh, who get proper education. Second generation. My father was the first generation. So the education is still, we look upon education as a mean to get our livelihood. There is a no intellectual kind of education. We don't see it in a way that it can evolve us on intellectual level. It just the education we are even receiving, it's on a very basic level. So community has to do, there has to be done a lot when it comes to the community. That's why I put all this responsibility on our Ashraf intellectual class, and they fail us very badly, very badly. All their, I mean, it's very, how to put it, like it's irony that they fight about for social justice, but within the Hindu community they will talk about the casteism and everything, but of Hindu casteism. And since I have been speaking about Pashmanda community, I don't listen any kind of support. I don't receive any support. Not a single word that yes, your fight is very justifiable and we should listen to you. No, even my fight for social justice within my community gets branded as a uh, being how to put it, like I am appeasing majority. I just don't know how I'm appeasing majority by bringing social justice within my community. So that's the problem, that community get they just listen to the people whom they believe. And this mindset of the fear always have been there, always.
So,
So it's
the
easy to trigger.
CAA just CAA was not a new idea. It didn't come in the last 9 years. I mean, it's been since independence, I would say, and the flow of refugees, etc. So you cannot. I mean, the way it's portrayed in the West, in the United States, institutions and media continue to hammer it as a discrimination of Muslims only. When the United States itself has laws based on religion, I mean, they have the Lautenberg specter that calls out Christians and Jews from the earlier Soviet Union, etc. So, of course, it's hypocrisy. But the point is that somehow the West has decided they need to be the big brothers of Indian Muslims. So, Zeba, I want to ask you, what do you think about it? Are you looking for a big brother in the United States, or you have your own voices, you can bring your own changes?
For me, this talk was very important, and when I got to know that US audience will be there, it is quite important because we have seen many reactions coming from the United States and from the West on CAA. And so we need to understand that it is India's internal matter and it doesn't concern the left liberals out there. The Western deep state should refrain from, commenting on our issues and how we handle it. Although, even though it is India's own domestic issues, it's our civilization and all our commitment we own to the unfortunate Indians who did not have any choice with regards to partition and became victim of the state-sponsored discrimination and ethnic cleansing. The propaganda that has been unleashed by the Islamists worldwide with vested interest with the Western world is that India is doing this to its own Muslim citizen, and we want to harm our fellow Muslim brothers and sisters in our country, and that is completely wrong. And on the contrary, we are enjoying democracy at its finest, and India is one of the prosperous and religiously free country, and we Muslim enjoy the fruit of it, of secularism and liberalism, and we don't think we need any big brother from outside to tell us, because that is why the issue has been interpolated, and hence there has been so much of hatred and global narrative that has been running through likes of Al Jazeera, etc. But it is very important to make it clear that India is doing it only what its big leaders of freedom movement wanted it, like Nehru, as you have mentioned, Gandhi, and even the INC, Indian National Congress manifesto had it, and they themselves wanted CA, and BJP, the current ruling party, has been building on it, and it was and they are implementing it. It was there in the manifesto, and they are doing it. But I don't know why there is so much of hatred. And I would like to, I mean, recall that Manmohan Singh himself, I think back in 2006 or 8, he himself said that why CA is important and why we should implement it. So just because you don't like a party, you don't like a leader, that doesn't change our cultural and our civilizational ethos of, not bringing in people who are unfortunate and are struggling. And there are so many things that are happening to them.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because any discussion on CAA gets lost up in emotion. There's some really hard facts into why these three countries were chosen, right? We've talked about the historical connection of partition, Nehru, Gandhi, everybody, right? But let's also look at the numbers, right? In Afghanistan, in as recently as 1970, they were estimated to be 700,000 Hindus and Sikhs, mostly Sikhs and Sikhs and Hindus in the country. I think today it's less than maybe 20 or whatever, less than 100 definitely. That is a shocking vanishing of an entire group, and Afghanistan is their historic homeland. Bangladesh is an even more stark story because, I think Bangladesh tends to get away with better press, but from Assam, you know that situation more closely. So, in what was East Pakistan in 1951, after the partition, Hindus formed 22% of the population of East Pakistan, by 1974, in the first census taken after the creation of Bangladesh, that number had already fallen to 13.5, and today it's 8%. I mean, among all these, so if you look at the trajectory of a population from 22% to 8%, and then you hear these hyperbolic calls about impending genocide in India, but you've literally ignored a genocide that has happened in the neighboring country. 22% to 8%, how is that not a genocide? And what are the people who are caught up in that area supposed to do, right? And then, of course, Pakistan, which I think gets more press, where there are blasphemy laws galore and where blasphemy laws are used. I mean, I think Hindus are less than 2% of the population in Pakistan today, but they are a disproportionately high number of the victims who get caught up, and of course Christians and Sikhs, I think, get caught up in the blasphemy laws. And if you think of some of the most notorious cases like Asiya Bibi and Notan Lal, who just managed to get off earlier this year, and Asiya Bibi, who finally managed to flee after, living under literally a death sentence for years. And the worst situation in Pakistan is the 1,000 plus young girls. I mean, 10, 12, 14. I mean, my heart breaks when I see these images and pictures coming out. More than 1,000, and that's the reported cases from Hindu, Christian, and Sikh communities who are kidnapped, forcibly converted, and quote unquote married. I call it, to their abductors. And you can say violence against women happens in every country, and that is true. Certainly, right here in California, in the U.S., and in India too. But what is different is the institutional support which is given to the abductors there, which is what they misuse. So they're actually misusing religion. And this is one of the things that was the. I know if we have time, I want to have Rishabh quickly show us a quick video, and then I'd love to hear about your guy because I know Amna, you have met some of these refugees. So So what we just saw was a video some of you might have seen. It was from just last summer. And there's this young girl, 14-year-old Soham Kumari, who, like many others, got kidnapped and was forcibly converted in Sindh. And just because her family had some resources and made, just sheer determination, luck, everything coming together, they made enough of a noise that she actually got a court hearing, which is very unusual. Most of these 1,000 girls never even get a court hearing. And this is where I think the fundamental difference lies, because the court, can you imagine a 14-year-old who's torn away from her parents, is subjected to abuse, who knows what she had already been through at this point, and the court, instead of restoring her to her family, sends her to a so called government safe house. And you can just see the trauma of that young girl surrounded by adults who are not restoring her for some basic healing to her family, but are actually sending her away from her family. And that heartrending picture in the end, when she's clinging to her father's hand from the police van and trying to, kiss him goodbye, and he's trying to give her reassurance. I don't know what reassurance a parent can really give in such a situation. But this is when people glibly bring up other parts of the world and other issues. I always say this is, you have to really have no heart to just turn a blind eye to the kind of institutional targeting that is going on of these young girls simply because of their faith. So, and I'm not saying that violence against women is unique to these three countries. It happens everywhere. But I think if I went to the police and especially the judiciary in other countries, I would not expect to be told that my 14-year-old is having a period and is therefore now ready to be married off to her abductor, which, by the way, is a violation of that province's own laws. So, I just want to bring that up because I think in all this academic discussion, we sort of forget the human cost that is underway. And Amnaji, I know you had talked about visiting some of the refugees and refugee camps. So just wanted to hear your experiences of what you saw and heard, and why
Uh,
this law is so important.
One thing I want to mention, I think I told Sudhaji also, the refugee camp I talked about was something different. It was not the refugee camp of Hindu women here.
Oh, sorry.
However, I have met some individual who are here coming from the Pakistan, Pakistani Hindu, but they told me that they couldn't have a dignity, life of dignity here because they don't have a legal rights. And India has a history where we do not promote to provide citizenship to people because we have already so much population to take care of. We do give refugee status to people, but we do not give citizenship very easily. However, when we talk about these people who are coming from our neighboring country, they do not have any other mean, so they live in a very bad condition. And since I am from Rajasthan, you will find a lot of villages where these people coming from the Pakistan live there, and they do not have any legal right to, for example, if they even have a degree of MBBS of doctor degree, they cannot practice here in India until unless they get the citizenship. So this CA was only to make easier for them because they needed that citizenship. That's why Indian government, and it's not introduced by the Indian government. Even what I have read, Congress were doing work on it so that these people can have a dignityful life of dignity here in India. They do not have any other mean. They do not have any other place to go. Uh, I will come to that case of the Hindu women getting abducted also, but I just wanted to clarify one more thing. India also have Muslim refugee from Afghanistan. We do have that culture. India never said that we are not going to give citizenship or place to Muslims coming here, or we are just going to close our border on a Muslim. That's not the case. If you will go through the legal process as a Muslim, you still can dream about having Indian citizenship. Adnan Sami got one citizenship, right? So this discrimination against Muslim identity, I do not understand for on which basis the international media is claiming that. So,
Amna, the question, sorry to
mm,
interrupt. You
yeah,
finish, and I have
yeah,
a
no,
question. The
yeah,
question, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, you go ahead, you go ahead.
One question here that is
Mm,
also in my head. Um, I know this CAA has gone on for a long time and it was implemented under the current
mhm.
government. Um, but could the government have done more education of the general community? Even the naming of that is not the right thing. Citizenship Amendment Act would kind of make people sit up and say, "What? My citizenship?" Right? They should have called it something like citizenship for persecuted minority refugees or something, right? And then have had a series of town halls or some conversations to kind of tone down the rhetoric, to counter the negative propaganda that was happening, that, like you said rightly, it caused extreme violence and harm, loss of life and loss of property, and a bigger distrust between communities, right? So I'm just wondering, do you have, like, as you are outspoken about these topics, do you have a way through the minority representation that the government has to share your views? New laws should really be considered in the context of PR. You know, a lot of this has to do with PR within the community to prevent further misunderstandings and disharmony. I just wanted your thought because I know you also went on BBC. You were so vocal there.
Yeah. I mean, I want this government, but how to put it? Like, you have lost any expectation from one certain kind of political party. Now you have all the expectation with one political party. So you want them to perform so best that you start becoming critical of them. So yes, I many times criticize them that they could have done this little better. But the same time, I do understand, even they would have gone through that path, even they would have been very smart about it and would have done good PR, still, I know this disruption would have been brought even after that, because the camp which is anti-Modi, they can go to any extent. They will be very, they are very, हाउ टू पुट इट, लाइक वो होता है ना, अर्जुन ने जैसे तीर लेके रखा हुआ है मछली की आंख में मारने के लिए. सो दे आर वेरी डेडिकेटेड टू देयर कॉज. So no matter this government tried to tackle this issue how smartly, they will still do their work. And unfortunately, people try to portray that these people are out of the power, so they don't have enough, power in their hand. They do not have any kind of, they're not enjoying certain kind of power, but they do not understand that they have a very old network on the place, the global leftist network. And I do see Islamist network as a problem, but I do see this leftist network a lot more problematic, because they justify this Islamism, which is clearly wrong in itself. And together, this network actually brings so much disrupt. They are dreaming of this disruption, because the more disruption can happen on the ground, the more they can attack this current government. So yes, but still I would say that it would have been far better if government would have gone through other path, would have been more clear in their messaging, would have been more they even didn't bring entire detail about it. It kind of gave other side more, how to say, like they gave them more, they arm them
Ammunition.
properly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ammunition, yes, they
Yeah.
arm them properly so they can use it. So I agree that government could have been smarter about it. However, I still believe even after that, they would have done their damage.
Yeah. I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the double standards are staggering, especially when the criticisms come from here. Because as Sudhaji mentioned earlier, I'm not an expert on every country, but I know that the US has laws that specifically single out certain groups and give them priority in the immigration process, in the refugee process. The most famous being the Lautenberg Amendment, which has been around for like, I don't know, 2, 3 decades now. And it's constantly renewed by Congress and funded by Congress, and they keep come, it started out with giving priority to Jews and Christians in what used to be USSR. Now it's a different set of groups based on, the way the world has evolved, whoever is facing the most persecution today. And to me, it's almost crazy. Like, when you go to help somebody, there is a human tendency to help whoever you think needs it the most, right? You're not going to do an analysis. Like, I always tell people, if there's a fire in your neighborhood and the fire engine comes to help, are you going to constrain them with a whole set of like raw rules? You must go alphabetical order, you must go chronological order, you must start with the house that caught fire first, even if the third house is the one most on fire. I mean, these are ridiculous things. You let the fire people do their job, fix the fire and get out. And but somehow when it comes to the Indian government and trying to help the in a neighborhood that is full of turmoil, trying to offer some, I consider, very overdue and very basic help, because all that it does is gives them a break in their paperwork. Because as Amna, you said, right, the people who are living there, they don't get access to basic facilities. Their children can't go to school, they can't get ration, they can't get jobs, they can't use a medical degree. They're like out there selling stuff on the streets. How is
Yeah.
that good for anybody, right? Anybody who's for human rights normally advocates that a stateless person or group should be given the proper status or paperwork or citizenship, whatever they're eligible for, so that they can start to rebuild their life back together. So, in the name of human rights, to oppose human rights for the most wretched doesn't make sense to me. Uh, Zeba, I would love to hear your personal story about how, you mentioned, because we talked about NRC and Assam, and what was your family's experience going through NRC process?
I mean, it was quite smooth. I had a word with my mom that, but there was no problem as such. All our names are there. The problems will be when your ancestors or your forefather don't have the document. So we didn't had much of a problem, but the entire process of NRC was very flawed in Assam. So I do understand why people mix CA and NRC, and it's really important to say that CA is different and NRC is different. But since the process was extremely flawed and there were so many mistakes and people, I think out of 3 crore 15 lakh or something people where their name didn't come up. So there was a lot of chaos. So I understand why there has been a lot of um, fear that has been amongst the Assamese people. So any country, and not just a democratic one, should have a national register of citizen (NRC). This is nothing but an exhaustive list of legal and bona fide citizens. So I do remember that our 10th mark sheet, then our Aadhaar and everything was submitted. So that and so that it is for our betterment and we could, and the entire process was done to weed out the illegal immigrants so that the ones who are legitimate can have all the rights like voting and all the extra benefits. But I would like to point out how things were not going in a fine manner with regards to NRC is because the pressure to cover because after Assam Accord was signed, NRC should have been done, but it didn't. So the pressure to cover everyone within a limited time frame caused a huge backlog where proper check and balances could not be done, and there were a lot of documents that has been submitted, and there were lots of errors that came in the list. So there were no negative consequence on people who submitted fake or falsely identified themselves. There were no backlash. There were no legal finality to those documents submitted. So thereby encouraging reckless behavior also within the citizen. And there were irresponsible statements on throwing people out, deporting them, and there are detention centers, you'll be kicked out there. So there were a lot of fear that was going on. So there are a lot of misinformation that has been peddled, and even though if you NRC has been done in Assam, but it could have been done, and there are news that it will be done all across the country. But when once it has been failed there, we need to find out more better ways to deal with it. So whenever I ask anybody in my family also, they try to mix NRC's process and CA, and they kind of feel fear about it. But once, I believe when 2019 the CA talk came up, it was not so clear. But right now, the government has taken a lot of initiative to bust the myths. So even Amit Shah himself speaking, and there has been a lot of uh, information that has been given that what exactly is CA, what will be done, and the time limit is also open, and it's not like instantly you have to do everything.
Zeba, I just had a clarification. So when the NRC, the National Register of Citizens, happened in Assam, it didn't single out any religion, right?
No, no. We all, everyone had to submit it. It was simply speaking, its purpose was to weed out the illegal immigrants. And regardless of being a Hindu, Muslim, everyone from Assam has a problem with illegal immigrants from Bangladesh. So if your ancestors do not have any identification, you are an illegal immigrant and you have made your way illegal. So India is the most populous country with a land area one third of China. So it is highly densely populated country with shortage of resource, and we have to admit that. No doubt we are not like any Western country where population is less. So we can't take in a lot of refugees. It is a wise process to weed out illegal immigrants, and we want to keep our border tight as possible and say no to any illegal immigrants. And that's why what is the point of having a border then? One of the misconception was about deportation that was muddled in across everyone's mind. And we had to go through the entire process regardless of religion.
Yeah, thank you. Also, as my understanding is that there is no national NRC even drafted. So this
So,
conflation of CAA with NRC itself is a very mischievous thing. And Amna, if you want to comment on that, how to keep these things in separate boxes and so people don't get concerned and worried.
I mean, now it's very clear that CA and RC has nothing to do because I think we got notification of CA already, and it is getting implemented, and there is no NRC on the site. So I think it should be enough to get the clarification. And I would also like to tell this thing that India also in the past have had help to the Tamil Hindu when they were going through the similar kind of situation in Sri Lanka. So we have that history. Plus, we also within the India, we believe in social justice so much that we have policies on a base of religion. Minorities, all the minorities get certain kind of benefit, and we have our own personal laws. I am against it, but we do consider about every community in India. And I mean, for the number, and Khalid says it a lot, that we have the second largest number of mosques. I mean, what else you would uh, look for? I mean, there is a one thing what people do, they mix secularism with the pluralism. When it comes to the pluralism, I did not experience the same kind of pluralism even in London. I remember from the childhood getting vacation on every major Muslim festival, Eid, Bakrid, or any other community, major festival of other community. That doesn't happen in London. I didn't see the same thing. And I was very surprised. I thought, okay, this country is more progressive, more liberal, and why I'm not getting this vacation on Eid? Why only in Easter on Christmas? So then I realized the kind of pluralism we have in India, I don't think any part on the earth we can experience that or dream about that. So people do not understand that. And even London, uh, intellectual in London, I have talked to them and they clearly accept that it has a Christian morality to it. So, and uh, if we come back to the fact, India also is the land of certain culture, and we Muslim also follow that culture. So just accepting that fact doesn't make us something like against secularism or non-secular or something. So and West fail because they have Abrahamic lenses, and I do understand because I'm a part of that community. So I understand why do they fail to understand this detail, and many times they do it deliberately because they have a certain invested interest as well. So uh, anyone who want to understand with honesty that CA is not discriminating against Indian Muslim can do that. But if someone already have a certain kind of agenda or have so much hatred against Hindu majority nation that they do not want to learn the reality, we cannot help them. I believe that means Zeba, there are other Muslims like Arshia Malik, Umar Ghazi, Khalid. We are trying to do as much as we can. However, it's very saddening thing that we do not get the platform. I do believe the way we deserve. We do not get that platform. I like mainstream media does not invite us to speak. Like and I hope that it will change because at least we are getting certain kind of exposure, and I hope in future that will change and that will be good for everyone, including my own community.
Mhm. One other question I have is because you spent time in UK, did Britishers ask you about discrimination of Muslims in India and the oppression of Muslims in India, and how did you answer?
They do
It was the
not
same
ask
Catholic
me.
theory.
Yeah, they do not ask me. They claim, "Oh, Hindus are converting you guys." I said, "What? When?" I said, "Do you even understand there is a no concept of converting in Hinduism? There is no concept because this is Abrahamic concept, right? So they are like clueless about it, but they do claim very easily that, oh, you guys, Hindus are converting you guys, you minority, you have to convert. I said, no, there is no such a thing. What you're talking about, you don't even know the fundamental of Hinduism. So there are so much misconception. The university I was studying, I remember having a dialogue with a lot of students, and it's very saddening and appalling to see the kind of misconception they have towards the Hindu majority. They do not know one single thing. They just believe that even it's not Modi, it's something similar to Hitler is there, and some kind of genocide is going on. And I was like, yeah, I live there on a ground, and you should come and visit and see us. How what a pluralistic society we have. Yes, we can have our problem grievances, but we do believe in our institution. Like Pushpita ji was mentioning about this girl who went to the judicious to get the justice, but she didn't get it, right? And I would mention one case of Bilkis Bano, and it was during the riot. The women of both community were getting targeted that time. But how our judiciary system took care of it. Remember that. So even if we have such a issue, and mind it, when we talk about Muslim women becoming victim, within India, we have a Hindu women becoming a victim of Islamism. We do have that cases where Hindus are majority, but we do trust in our institution. We go there and our grievances get addressed, right? And there is no country on the planet Earth where we can find utopia, where there is all the community are living in such a fair society that they do not have any flaws. There is no what is called fault line between the communities. But India get special treatment in that regard. Like Hindus are majorities, are this evil people. You have to go and read the history. This pluralism of Hindu majority country is not nothing new. We have a very long back history of it, when Indian state was not there even. We have that back history back then. So they are very unaware, I would say. They do not know much about India. So I just believe that we need to work more on awareness, basically. And sadly, what happened with this student of university, they do read Guardian, a lot of them. So when you read Guardian, what kind of information you will be consuming?
The readers of Guardian do not understand that the Guardian was founded by slave owners, and they've never apologized for it. Okay, so I want to bring it up here. That is
So
the
one thing is, obviously the big criticism leveled against NRC is, why does it exclude the Muslims of these three countries? So what is it that you guys would like to say there? And Zeba, if you had
Uh,
something to add before we go there, if you had something to add to what Amna was saying, please do jump in.
yeah, one of the misinformation across the globe is everything is anti-Muslim and CAA is also anti-Muslim. Just because this law is not pro-Muslim, it doesn't have to be anti-Muslim. So it's very logicless arguments propagated by people and the opposition, and it's truly appalling. So even the foreign media is saying that CA is not a good law because India enforces migrant law that excludes Muslims. But our own media house itself, like NDTV, says that it's a test of citizenship of Muslims. But CA is not about testing citizenship. Um, we have all discussed that there are there are arguments that why are Sri Lankans not included, because this entire law is based on persecution based on religion, and in Sri Lanka it was Sri Lankans versus Tamils, if I'm not wrong, and the ethnic cleansing. So that's a different thing. Maybe in future that will come inside. There will be other people. There's another problem that I have with CA is that they have given a specific date of December 2014. But I also do understand that you have to start with something. So I know that it doesn't make sense that why an arbitrary date limit is given of 2014, but we have to start somewhere. So we have taken those three countries, but also I need to highlight that people think that other people can't come into our country, they can't take citizenship. Even the people like the Ahmadiyas from Pakistan, they can come. And there is Section 6 of the Citizenship Act. CA doesn't come under the spectrum of citizenship. It's just a fast track temporary law. So any foreigners, including Muslims from Pakistan, Bangladesh, or anywhere across the globe, can apply for registration or naturalization as a citizen of India, like any other foreigner, if he or she fulfills certain criteria under the Citizenship Act of 1955. And under this, to give facts also, India has offered citizenship and resettlement to around 5 lakh persons of Tamil origins from rooting from Sri Lanka, because we have agreements with them. 1964 agreement, 1974 agreement. From Myanmar, we have approximately 2 lakh people who have come to India from because we have another agreement from I think 1963 onwards, and we have people from Uganda also, around 3,000 people. So Muslims from Pakistan, Bangladesh, Afghanistan can avail and can come with their due legal process, and that's a very big misconceptions that have been peddled that people from other country can't come. But also, I would like to highlight that when partition happened, Pakistan was made a Muslim country, and Hindus themselves happily gave them that land. So now now when I mean, Pushpita ji has also given the data of how much Hindus were there in Pakistan and Bangladesh and how it is right now, which is in Bangladesh it has been mostly wiped out. It's 0.04 something percent. In Pakistan, I think it's around 8%, if I'm not wrong. But you can't bring up an argument saying that we Muslims are also facing persecution and we also need to be included under CAA, which is a special fast track process for certain communities. You already have the entire. There are so many Islamic countries where so many where you could go into, but it's fine. But you have other ways to come into. You can't force yourself that we also want to be included in this particular law just because it's not pro Muslims or excludes Muslims. There are other way of um, getting citizenship. There are people who argue that um, um, that why will we go to a country like India which is so poor. I mean, look at the state of Afghanistan. Look at the state of Pakistan, who has to sell donkeys and their embassies to survive. So that's all that I have to say.
Very good.
Yeah,
I really want
excellent
to
point.
thank both of you, ladies. Unless Pushpita, you have one more question. We are on
No,
time.
I was just saying, excellent point. And I mean, I think back to what Zeba mentioned earlier, right, when she was talking about the Tamils and everything else. I don't think, again, I'm not an expert or a spokesperson for the government, but I don't think the CAA says it is the end all and be all and that there never will be another law about the Indian immigration system, right? It was a very, as to a two-page law specifically targeted at a very specific group of communities. That means every other community still has a path and a process, and future laws are certainly possible. So people who care about one group or another, India is an open democratic country, and they should go in there and make a case for why certain group also deserves a shortcut in the process or a break in the paperwork. One thing that we had to mention, when we talked about a break in the paperwork or shortcut in the process, when you look at what the situation we showed, or the way the people are treated in Pakistan and Bangladesh and Afghanistan, it makes sense, right? If you have to, we've heard stories about a Pakistani doctor couple in Karachi who fled overnight because they got word that their daughter was being targeted. A well settled couple, both husband and wife doctors, they packed and ran overnight. Now, put yourself in their shoes. What would you have been able to take if you were running at an hour's notice? How would you be able to build a paperwork trail that people who are fleeing for economic reasons or less drastic reasons may have had been able to plan more? So, again, I think I always bring it back to the humanitarian aspect, because you're not dealing with, all of us, Suraji and I are immigrants. We came here, right? We had a proper immigration process to follow. If I didn't have a document, I could ask for a copy, I could go, get it again, whatever. That's not the situation of somebody who had to flee at an hour's notice or overnight to save, something as basic as their daughter's freedom. And so to give them a break and for that to cause so much angst among others is something that I will never understand. But yeah, I think I'm looking at the questions, and I think we actually answered a lot of them, paraphrasing what was said. Um, so yeah, I think if there are any last questions, please speak up. But otherwise, we'll be respectful of people's time. And just again, thank Amna ji and Zeba ji for their time, for their fearlessness in speaking up, because it's not easy to go against the prevailing narrative or the popular narrative. And we totally understand that mainstream media does not give them the right platform, and there is a strong desire to show only one side of the equation. We see that in the case of CAA, but we've seen it in the case of many other issues. CoHNA itself was a response to the deplatforming of Hindu voices that don't fit a certain bill. There is only a very narrow slice of Hindu voices that will get platformed by the media in the West, and to a large extent, the media in India too. And so I think we are all in it together. And to everybody in our audience, that was to make a pitch for why CoHNA exists. It's because we have to help ourselves. Zebaji and Amnaji are helping themselves and their communities, speaking up and speaking fearlessly. And we all need to do the same, because we have our dharma. We have to help ourselves. We cannot sit there waiting for the right reward before we speak up. You speak up because it's the right thing to do, because it's the truthful thing to do, and because it helps some people in dire necessity. So ask everyone to do the same. Please check out and follow them on their social media channels. Please support them, please support us, and please become informed, because there is a lot of information available to counter the propaganda that goes on. It takes a little bit of time to find. Sometimes organizations like CoHNA can help curate that. People like Amna and Zeba can do that, but we all have to speak up for that. So
Thank
that's
you,
all I
Amna
have.
and Zeba.
I just
Yeah, go ahead, Amna.
I just wanted to add one thing. The people here are listening that yes, like a lot of us started speaking in the reaction, I won't say reaction, response of certain things, because we felt that there is a gap and certain kind of voice and ideas also should be heard. However, I would like to say we do not need to be reactionary of everything. We need to be very calm down, learn about the thing, and then bring the truth on the platform, which sometime I feel that people are losing the sight of that. They are they're basically forgetting why they started speaking. And we do not need to become the mirror of the other side. We are non-left for certain reason. So that's I just wanted to add.
Very
Thank you.
good point. I think it's your voices that keeps the truth at the forefront, right? I
At
think
least
we
I
are
try to.
Yeah, no, we appreciate it greatly. That's why we want to have your voices heard here, because it's never heard here. Let me be very clear. There are communities here, Muslim communities and left Hindu communities, who want to propagate the negativity about our people altogether. So your voices are very important, and we really, really appreciate you joining us and talking about it. And I want to also ask you both to be very safe you know, every wherever you are, and it applies to us too. But we all should have the freedoms to speak out and tell our truths. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Namaste, everybody. Thanks to all who joined and asked questions and listened. And now take this message and go out and tell everybody Indian Muslims have voices and people need to listen to it. Thank you.